Hello and welcome back to one of my favourite series that I make on this channel. Welcome back to Jack in the Books. Today, the books I'm going to be discussing are this year's Booker Prize shortlisted books because I am going to be hosting the Booker Prize official live stream. I'm so excited. I can't believe I get to meet all of these authors and see who wins in person. That for me is such a dream come true. I just can't quite get over it, but I've been making this series where I rank books based purely on their opening line. Now, I am filming this quite far in advance of it going live on my channel because I actually need to read all of these books in advance of the Booker Prize, but I wanted to put this video up 1 week before the Booker, just to give you a little heads up that it is 1 week to go until I host the live stream. Hopefully by the time this goes up, we'll be quite a way through reading these books because I'm so excited about them. So I just need you to know, this is pre-filmed. I'm not going to try and read all of these books in the week before the Booker Prize, but let's dive in, shall we? Firstly, we have this book. This is Western Lane, and the opening line is this. And I kind of think this is a good way of getting a little introduction to the style of each of these books, so hopefully this gives you a bit of an indication of which one you will enjoy too. I don't know if you have ever stood in the middle of a squash court on the tee and listened to what is going on next door. What I'm thinking of is the sound from the next court of a ball hit clean and hard. It's a quick, low pistol shot of a sound with a close echo. The echo, which is the ball striking the wall of the court, is louder than the shot itself. This is what I hear when I remember the year after our mother died. And our father had us practicing at Western Lane 2, 3, 4 hours a day. Okay. So Western Lane is a setting. It's a squash court, or more generally a sports centre. We've established that their mother has died, so I think this is going to be an exploration of grief. We're going to be looking at father-child relationships. And I also think the idea of the echo is quite interesting, like that the reverberations of our actions. Simply hitting the ball is one thing, but where it lands, where it hits, how it bounces back is entirely another. So I think that's really interesting as a kind of opening line image. It's written in the first person, but is addressing the reader as you, so it's kind of breaking that fourth wall, which again is very intriguing. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely getting an insight into the plot and the writing style, the tone, and some of the core themes just straight from that first page. So that was a solid opening line. But right now I have nothing to compare it to. So let's move on to book number 2. This is The Beast. The Beasting. This is a mighty book, it's huge, and it has to start somewhere, so let's see. I'm pretty sure this book is about how little things that occur in our life, like little occurrences, end up having these butterfly effects. So let's see. In the next town over, a man had killed his family. Banging opening line. Anyway. He'd nailed the doors shut so they couldn't get out. The neighbours heard them running through the rooms, screaming for mercy. When he had finished, he turned the gun on himself. Everyone was talking about it, about what kind of man could do such a thing, about the secrets he must have had. Rumours swirled about affairs, addiction, hidden files on the computer. Whoa. Okay. That is not what I was expecting from that at all. It kind of reminds me of books like Brighton Rock, where it says Hale had been in Brighton no more than 4 hours before he realised he was going to be murdered. I've misquoted that, but it's something along those lines, and I kind of think that's so fascinating when we open with death, which is in itself an ending, you know? Opening with an ending is very, very experimental and interesting. We also have a lot of references to gossip and community. So obviously it's a man who kills his family, which is one kind of community. Then we have the neighbours, and then also they say everyone was talking about it. Rumours swirled. So I think that's quite an interesting concept, because I think this is set in a kind of a small town. So thinking about perspective, thinking about reactions, thinking about responses to extreme things that happen, could be a core theme in this book. There's reference to the next town over, so we're sort of thinking about how information spreads and also how information, I suppose, is translated, you know, from story to story, from person to person. What details are miscommunicated each time, leading to a kind of bastardization of the truth. I'm wondering too what that could kind of be foreshadowing, what is that referencing that might happen later in the book. So yeah, I think we're going to be thinking in this book about perspective, the truth, storytelling. This is really hard to decide between these two. I think they're pretty on par. I mean, the common theme so far is that they both have a death, or multiple deaths in this case, in the opening line. These are kind of neck and neck for me right now. I need to think harder about this one. I would maybe Maybe do it in this order, so Western Lane is number 1 still, but we'll see once I've kind of assessed the others. So the next book is called Study for Obedience. This is by Sarah Bernstein, and the opening line is, if I can find it, this. Oh, so this section is called A Beginning Again, which in itself is kind of an oxymoron, you know, like beginning again. It was the year the sow eradicated her piglets. It was a swift and menacing time. One of the local dogs was having a phantom pregnancy. Things were leaving one place and showing up in another. It was springtime when I arrived in the country. An east wind blowing, an uncanny wind as it turned out. Certain things began to arise. So already it's a very punchy narrative style, like lots of full stops. When I say first line, by the way, I'm kind of reading like the first paragraph, the first little chunk. This is a bunch of punchy, quick statements, really. It's interesting, again, we have death as like a common denominator here. So eradicated her piglets, the local dog had a phantom pregnancy. Like, we have this real sense immediately of loss and absence, but also like in the wake of expectation. So there's like an expectation that is being set up, which is being let down. I think that's a really interesting way to start a book, because what does that tell us about kind of what is going to happen in the plot over the next however many pages, 192. I would guess that means we are going to be following a character who kind of goes into an environment with some level of expectation and then is disappointed perhaps, or things aren't what she expected, and in that process maybe experiences a sense of loss. I don't know, and that's the fun of it. Like, I'm kind of just guessing at this point, which it's kind of a fun game to play, because I'm going to watch back this video once I have read these books and I'll see if I was actually right with my predictions. For me personally, I am going to put that as my 3rd favourite so far, just because I think the other 2 were really, really provocative, whereas I think is more like setting a tone in general. So yeah, that would be my order so far. These 2 are very, very close, so it's more like this. That's my visual representation of my sentiments. Next we have this one. This is the most colourful cover. This is If I Survive You by Jonathan Escoffery. Let's see. Oh, that's the blurb, not the opening line. I forgot the game, and it's my own game. Okay, this first section is called Influx. It begins with, what are you? Hollered from the perimeter of your front yard when you're 9, younger probably. You'll be asked again throughout junior high and high school, then out in the world, in strip clubs, in food courts, over the phone, and at various menial jobs. The askers are expectant. They demand immediate gratification. Their question lifts you slightly off your pre-adolescent toes, tilting you. Not just because you don't understand it, but because even if you did understand this question, you wouldn't yet have an answer. Whoa, okay. So this is definitely kind of considering identity, because I know that this book is about someone who moves from Jamaica to America. So I think this is really talking about, what's that word? Assimilation. Assimilation into a new culture, a new society, a new social surrounding, and how accepting people are, or whether they do reduce you down to the color of your skin, the way that you talk. It's really addressing how pervasive that is and how all-encompassing it can become when it's essentially a microaggression, right? Someone asking you like, oh, where are you from? No, where are you really from? For that to be happening, like they say, at school, at a food court, in a strip club, over the phone, at a job, you know, these things over time add up to a real issue, and something that I'm sure you really would start to resent and feel is actually excluding you rather than including you, because it immediately seeks to identify what makes you different, or at least to explain your difference, you know, in a way that is palatable for other people. So this immediately is making me think so many things, and so I think that's actually going to be my number 1. I'm thinking this is my current order. I really like that opening line, If I Survive You. If I survive reading this book, because honestly, I think this book is going to hurt my heart quite a lot. So moving on to the next book, this is Prophet Song, and we have the opening line. Okay, side note. This is a real side note, and it's not going to influence my opinion at all, but it has one of my favorite Bertolt Brecht quotes on the front as the kind of epigraph. In the dark times, will there also be singing? Yes, there will also be singing about the dark times. I love that quote so much. I think it's especially relevant right now. There's also a quote from Ecclesiastes, but that quote for me is also how the book It's also the epigraph for There There by Tommy Orange, which is another book I love. So I think about that. I think about that quite a lot, actually. Okay, the opening line. Forgetting all of that because that's not relevant to this particular competition. I do love an epigraph though. I'm always sad when a book doesn't have an epigraph. I understand that it's like an author's choice, but when I write my book, well, when my book comes out, it will definitely have an epigraph. I mean, I've already chosen it. Okay, moving on. The night has come and she has not heard the knocking. Standing at the window, looking out onto the garden. How the dark gathers without sound the cherry trees. It gathers the last of the leaves and the leaves do not resist the dark, but accepts the dark in whisper. Tired now. The day almost behind her. All that still has to be done before bed and the children settled in the living room. This feeling of rest for a moment by the glass. Watching the darkening garden and the wish to be at one with the darkness. To step outside and lie down with it. To lie with the fallen leaves and let the night pass over. To wake then with the dawn, and rise renewed with the morning come. But the knocking, she hears it pass into thought, the sharp, insistent rapping. Each knock possessed so fully of the knocker, she begins to frown. Then Bailey too is knocking on the glass door to the kitchen. He calls out to her, "Mum," pointing to the hallway without lifting his eyes from the screen. She opens the front door and two men are standing before the porch glass, almost faceless in the dark. Okay, so that took me a second to process how the dark was sort of being personified in a way, how the darkness was almost a character in itself, which actually is very, very powerful. It was the sentence, "How the dark gathers without sound the cherry trees." I was like, okay, working that out, like how to read that, because when you read it out loud the first time, sometimes you need to read the line a couple of times to understand it fully. How the dark gathers without sound the cherry trees. How the dark gathers without sound the cherry trees. Okay. Like where the emphasis is. Anyways, it's basically saying that the darkness was consuming the cherry trees without sound. Yeah, like the syntax of that just kind of threw me for a second. But this image is very sinister, you know? A knocking on your door in the nighttime when it seems like maybe she's a single mother and she has these two children. You know, that's an immediately very vulnerable situation to be in. I think we can all relate to that feeling of like being home alone at night and you suddenly hear a noise that you don't recognize, like a foreign noise. And you're like, where is that coming from? What does that mean? And you start to like question your safety, question everything. You question everything in that moment. So many thoughts run through your head. So I think that's a very evocative opening scene, because I think we can all put ourselves in that person's shoes. Eilish, I think her name is. We can all put ourselves in Eilish's shoes in that predicament. So, I am intrigued by this. It's very ominous and it does make me want to read on, which is of course the point. So, these have all been so good. I think what I'm gonna do is put it in at 4th place for now. So it's above Study for Obedience, but it's beneath The Bee Sting. The thing is, I liked this. I thought this was a solid opening paragraph, and yet that just shows the quality of these books this year. Wow. But we have one last entry. This is This Other Eden, and the opening line. Do we have an epigraph? Oh, we do. It's long. I'm gonna wait until I actually read this book to read that for the first time. But this is, oh, it's all italicized. Okay, there's like 2 pages which are all italicized before we get into what I would suggest is like the actual story, but we're gonna read this part because that is how the book opens. Benjamin Honey, American, Bantu, Igbo, born enslaved, freed or fled. At 15, only he ever knew. Ship's carpenter, aspiring orchardist, arrived at the island with his wife, Patience, née Rafferty, Galway Girl, in 1793. He brought his bag of tools, gifts from a grateful captain he had saved from drowning, or plunder from a ship on which he had mutinied and murdered his captain, depending on who said, and a watertight wooden box containing 12 jute pouches. Okay, so this is definitely an opening line that is just info dumping. It's a lot of exposition. It's a lot of establishing key facts. For me, I think obviously this one is the least exciting and impressive. I also need whoever at this publishing house who published this book. Oh, it's Penguin. Hutchinson Heinemann is the imprint. You need to work on your typography, babe, because I can't read that. That is so hard to read. It's way too small. I think the font in the rest of the book is going to be a little bit more doable, but the italics in this font, impossible. I had to read that out loud so many times before we got a cut that I can actually use in this video because I kept stumbling on the words. I couldn't freaking see them. I'm not letting that impact my decision, although it is in last place. It's more about the fact that for me, I'm just learning facts there. It's just an info dump. And I think that is going to be kind of crucial knowledge and pretext for the rest of the book. But I just prefer to kind of be thrown into the action, you know? Okay, here's what I did like about that. It's all about perspective, right? So, you know, talking about are these items that he has, were they rewards from a captain who he, you know, valiantly served? Or did he murder that captain? Like, the only person who would know is him and his wife, I suppose. So, again, we're really thinking about perspective here and also perception. Like, how do we perceive this character? Who do we choose to believe? And also how there are multiple possibilities to any one outcome. So that is interesting. And I'm very fascinated by this book. I am fascinated by the idea of an other Eden. But for the reasons I have lined out, this is my order. So in at number 6 is This Other Eden. At number 5, we have Study for Obedience. Number 4, Prophet Song. Number 3, The Bee Sting. Number 2, Western Lane. And number 1, If I Survive You. And I'm very intrigued to see, will this end up being my order of how much I enjoyed the books in general? I will let you know in due course. For now, this is my reaction to the opening lines of this year's Booker Prize shortlist. And I cannot wait to be hosting the official Booker Prize live stream in just 1 week for you guys. Oh my god, that's crazy. It's a little while for me yet. So I'm gonna dive into these books, and maybe this is a sign that I should start with If I Survive You. So thank you so much for watching this video. All the best, stay in touch, have a wonderful day, and I will catch you very, very soon. Bye-bye.